English pupils improved results in international reading exams. Children aged 9 and 10 who took part in assignments of reading ability ranked Jones 8th out of 50 participating countries. 9 and 10-year-olds in England have improved their reading scores in a set of prestigious international exams, although their results still lag behind Russia, Singapore, and Hong Kong, which topped the table. English children who took part in the 2016 test, the results of which were released on Tuesday, were ranked a creditable Jones 8th out of 50 participating countries. They scored the same as their peers in Norway and Taiwan, and climbed up from 10th position in the last round of tests 5 years earlier. They registered their best average reading score of 569 and are gradually climbing back up the rankings after a dramatic fall from third position in 2001 to 15th position in 2006, but were still outperformed by Northern Ireland, which was ranked 7th this time, and Ireland, which came 4th. The global assignment, which is separate from the PISA international test, was carried out as part of the PILS Progress in International Reading Literacy Study, International Comparative Survey of Reading Attainment. In comparison with England's moderate improvement, Belgium and France were further down the rankings, with their children registering lower average results. Scores also slipped in Canada, Denmark, and the US. The government welcomed the improved performance in reading among English pupils as evidence of the effectiveness of their reforms, including an increased emphasis on phonics, but as well as the countries listed above, children in Finland and Poland also outperformed their English peers. The study is led by the International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement and compares children's reading ability, experience of learning to read, and enjoyment of reading. Ministers regarded the latest results as significant because pupils who sat the test in 2016 are part of a cohort who will have been affected by reforms to the primary curriculum and assignment, including the national rollout of a phonics screening check in 2012. The margins of improvement are relatively small, up 7 points from 562 in 2011. Welcoming the results, the School Standards Minister Ng said, "Today's results push the success of our increased emphasis on phonics and continued focus on raising education standards on a global scale. Our rise through the global rankings is even more commendable because it has been driven by an increase in the number of low-performing pupils reading well. Our rise through the global rankings is even more commendable because it has been driven by rise through the global rankings is even more commendable because it has been driven by an increase in the number of low-performing pupils reading well. This demonstrates our determination to ensure this is a country that works for everyone, regardless of background. However, DH, the executive director of the IEA, warned against placing too much emphasis on comparative rankings. Ranking depends very much on the participating countries and their results, and even on the precision of their measurements. Consequently, we do not recommend to focus too much on rankings, but to focus on the scores and changes of scores as well as the other results published in the international report. JN, a senior research manager at the Center of International Education at the National Foundation for Educational Research, said international studies such as peers provide a valuable external perspective on how well the education system is serving our children and of which source of insight to inform improvement. Reading is a fundamental skill essential to future success and well-being, and so it is encouraging to see such a positive set of results for England and Northern Ireland. She added, the children who took part in Peer Standard School in 2010 shortly after the coalition coalition. The children who took part in Peer Standard School in 2010, shortly after the coalition government was elected. These results will be taken as evidence that recent reforms have been a success. It is important, however, not to jump to simplistic conclusions. Further analysis will be necessary. This should investigate the results in more detail to explore the extent to which the observed improvements are, in fact, a direct consequence of national reforms and what other factors are involved. The Pew test Iris conducted in 2001 included an assignment of all-night reading ability for the first time to measure how well students read and interpret digital information. England did not participate, but out of the 14 countries that took part, Singapore came out on top, followed by Norway and Ireland. More than 319,000 students worldwide were tested in 2016 as part of the assignments. Girls scored higher than boys in 48 of the 50 countries. In the two other countries, there was no significant difference between the genders. Students who attended preschool and whose parents regularly read and them at an early age had higher reading achievement. The study recorded the, stu- the study recorded the study recorded a decrease in parents' positive attitudes to reading in 31 countries, while 70% of parents reported they did not like to read themselves. The study also found that 1 in 4 students arrived at school hungry every day and had an average reading achievement score 32 points lower than students who arrive at school never feeling hungry. This article was created on 5th December 2017. Lauren Iron finished 7th in the rankings, lost 6th. We are desperate for human contact, people breaking lockdown to have sex. For nearly 12 months, single people have been unable to form new relationships with their chance to start a family or find love slipping away. Many allow ignoring the rules. Last summer, shortly after the first lockdown was relaxed enough to allow strangers to meet outdoors, Rosie, 35, an editor based in London, joined a man for a first date on Hampstead Heath. Hampstead Heath, he said. I brought some wine with me, but the glasses are in my flat, round the corner. I'd only met him for an hour, even in normal times. I wouldn't be up for that. She can't be entirely sure if he was suggesting an illicit drink. Illicit drink or a very quick off the bat shot. A very quick off the bat shot.
Quick off the bat shag.
But it wasn't a dilemma. But it wasn't a dilemma, at least. Maybe people's pheromones pheromones. At least, maybe people's pheromones have gone funny, Rose says. Or maybe I secretly have COVID and I can't smell anyone, probably, but I've had more smoldering vision at the supermarket than I have on a date. I've had sex just 4 times since March.
Smoldering
freezing for nearly a year, give or take the odd month. Odd. For nearly a year, give or take the odd. For nearly a year, give or take the odd months, the rules introduced to fight the spread of coronavirus mean that, in English, sex between single people or established couples who don't cohabit has in effect been either illegal or against regulations, or only allowed outdoors. To give that a sense of scale. To give that a sense of scale, 40% of people, rising to 71 among 16 to 29 years old, don't live in a couple. Things are not much better in the rest of the UK. Things are lot much better in the west of the UK. Over the summer, Scotland established couples from its household messing ban, and in Wales an extended household could be formed. But like the bubble system in England, of which more below, none of this did much for people who weren't already together. Looking at the rules as a whole, AW, a barrister specializing in human rights, concurs it's been a sad old year for everyone. As a result, talking to single people about their sex lives since the start of the pandemic is a
labyrinth.
A constant cross check between what was allowed and what actually happened, told in a series of bizarre, dream-like sequences from intense, anguished romance cut short by global circumstance, through familiar misfires sucked dry by the vacuum in which they began. Two borderless title days in municipal parks or local supermarkets. It's like reading a short story told by Neil T. 1 minute and I am the next. As Rosie puts it, the park is just not a sexy place. Anna, 32, an account manager in Manchester who runs into 2020 single dating, having lots of fun, describes together compliance compliance at the start of lockdown. We were told it might last just 3 weeks, and it is fun to not go on a date for 3 weeks. But I can almost hear her throwing her hands up down the phone line. This is nearly a year. You can't go for a year without exploring that side of yourself. Gordon, 43, a couch. A couch.
Coach.
A couch.
Coach.
A couch describes single friends splitting into two camps, the ones who put everything on hold and the ones having bootleg sex. We were going to do it, but lots shouts about it. Anna is now in a casual relationship, but casual no longer connotes carefree. You still want to make it as safe as possible, she says. So you are making agreements about how many other people that person is seeing. I, ideally, you are only seeing each other. It is a constant negotiation. It is exhausting. Becky, 35, started seeing a colleague started seeing a colleague in early summer. Colleague started seeing a colleague in early summer, but that has now ended. It became impossible in a pandemic, she says. Both of us wanted to be able to see our parents. You feel guilty and ashamed. It makes it impossible to maintain unless you move in together straight away. Did her flatmate ever object to her bringing someone over? He could hardly. His girlfriend is here now. The flatmate issue is far more important than you might think, given that nobody even talks about it. In June, the idea of bubbles was introduced in England, meaning that a single person could link with another household. Neil, 32, from just outside Liverpool, runs the Twitter account at ... which campaigns for the government to grant law prohibiting couples the right to see each other again indoors. He pointed out there is an assumption that support bubbles solve everything, but people living with their parents or in a house share aren't eligible. Faced with such a huge challenge to their sex lives, people turn to a diva, lost to the letter of the law, but to the most cautious persons in the house. Rosie has two flatmates, both also single. We agreed that we were allowed to break the rules if we were going to have sex. We weren't just allowed to go to any old maid's house, but if there was a goal inside, then yes. For a short time, from 5th July, from 5th July, it was once again legal to go to somebody's house and was your priest there, but only for 1 month. But only for a month. When new restrictions were introduced in the law of England, from this point until November, sex bans were switched on and off from area to area. There was a short period when only people under hours of weight were allowed to have lawn cohabiting or bubble sex. The looser regulations around Christmas for tiers 1 and 2 means you could con-
Conceivably.
conceivably have gone on a day so long as it was on Christmas Day, all of which means that some people started a relationship when it was legal, only to find that it was suddenly illegal. Neil, who is a primary school teacher, met his accountant's boyfriend in October. It's pretty piquant to teach 30 kids a day and the rest and not even be allowed to sit in your partner's garden. Charlie, 46, who works for an NGO, has a tiny home. She met Karen in October on Nest, a core dating app. It came to an explosive head right as the November lockdown began. I think we got a hotel room the last night before they all shut. Karen was living with friends, so they had nowhere to go. We spent a lot of time in Oz Farm on Bloomsbury Street. Then non-essential retail closed. It became Rotham store marshes. That was all we could do. That was fearing. I felt like a teenager. I mean, I got no sense as a teenager, but not how I imagine teenagers should be. Star-caused, tragic nervous, I was smitten. Karen went back to Scandinavia. Scandinavia. Scandinavia, where she's from, and is now locked down there. A lot of people are very angry, Leo says. This is about more than me and my situation. From a safety point of view, we probably wouldn't be meeting anyway, because he lives with his parents and they are in their 60s. My sense is that this hasn't become a bigger issue because people have taken things into their own hands. They are decided for themselves what is safe and reasonable. It turns out you can only enforce abstinence by statutory instrument for a short time before you create a large number of criminals. And if the people I spoke to are anything like representative, most of them are quite livid. The one rule for them, another for us. In 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 indignation came up a lot, but its mascot was not Dominic Cummings but Neil Ferguson, the epidemiologist who was burst in May for breaking regulation with his married lover. Echoed across everyone, gay, straight, in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, is this sense that, for the government, the nuclear family has been the priority, as Anna puts it. The people who have bought houses, had babies, got pregnant, bought purpose, everything else has been stripped away. This is what you should be doing. This anger didn't come from COVID denial or a lack of civil duty, rather a sense of single people having been completely silent, sidelined. The government's approach to it is so pathetic, pathetic, so pathetic, so childish, so Tory. Rosie continues. Everything has to be family friendly. There is no recognition that they are governing a nation of adults and having a sex life is part of being an adult. People in established relationships who don't cohabit feel the same way. Leo says that when the government talks about households, it is a certain model of society where we are all in our little family units. It doesn't necessarily reflect the complexity of many people's lives today. It is not beyond the reach of modern society to accommodate this complexity. In Belgium, they invented the concept of the Knuffel contact, literally a hot body, but widely understood as Lottie, Lottie, Lottie 37 phrases it as a stretching exemption, although there is a lot of liquidity in the shredding markets these days. Last week, the Brussels Hotel Association appealed to cultural contrast to keep the industry alive by many breaking in their own capital. You don't get much more explicit than that. Nobody goes to a hotel for hard in Italy. Meanwhile, as far back as last April, they introduced the congeniality rule, a word that even Italians had to Google. The government finally clarified it could mean relations, in-laws, spouse, cohabitants, long-term partners and loved ones. Loved ones is doing a lot of healthy loving there. It seems a peculiarly British response. To think that sex will simply vanish if you ban it, but don't really talk about it.